It started with a rumor. Not a loud one, not the kind that explodes across social media overnight, but a quiet whisper shared among a few fan accounts, a subtle hint buried in late night comments, a curious question repeated one too many times to be ignored. Did Moon Jae-young visit Cha Eun-woo during his military service? And if she did, why was everyone trying so hard to keep it quiet? The rumor began after a fan posted a short message on a community forum saying they spotted a woman who looked suspiciously like Moon Jae-young entering the base area on a cold evening. No photos, no videos, just a description, simple, clean, and strangely detailed. A long brown coat, a black cap pulled low, and a familiar posture that fans of Moon Jae-young instantly recognized. The comment was deleted minutes later, but the internet never forgets. Screenshots were shared, discussions exploded, and the curiosity spread faster than anyone expected. Most fans brushed it off at first. After all, celebrities often get mistaken for one another, and Jae-young visiting Eun-woo during service seemed too bold, too risky, too exposed. But then, more clues began to surface, and each one felt like a breadcrumb leading to something deeper. The first clue came from Jae-young herself. She had uploaded a photo on her Instagram story just a few hours before the rumored sighting. It was simple, a warm cup of tea, a quiet corner, and a caption mentioning, "Sometimes the heart needs a pause." Nothing unusual. But fans with sharp eyes noticed something else. The small patch of fabric visible near the cup matched the inside lining of a coat she had been photographed wearing a few days before. A coat that looked very, very similar to the one described at the base. Then came the second clue. Eun-woo's fellow soldier posted a harmless update on social media, showing a group photo of the unit during their break time. Everything seemed normal except for one detail. Someone had placed a small snack bundle on Eun-woo's seat. Fans recognized the brand immediately. One Moon Jae-young had been known to frequently gift to staff on set. Coincidence? Maybe. But people started to question it. And then the biggest clue appeared. A fan who claimed to live near the base mentioned seeing a black van with tinted windows arriving quietly on the same day. The driver stepped out, spoke briefly with someone at the gate, and left the engine running. Moments later, a woman exited the van with her head down, guided by the driver with surprising care. No one took photos because the moment passed too quickly, but the description once again matched Jae-young almost perfectly. As the pieces gathered, fans began to wonder if the meeting truly happened. What was the reason behind it? And why was it kept so quiet? To understand that, you have to go back to before Eun-woo enlisted, to those final weeks when he was preparing for service. Industry insiders mentioned that he had been unusually reflective, thoughtful, even sentimental at times. Filming schedules were tight, events were packed, and gossip was constant. But the one thing that remained consistent was his private connection to someone he trusted deeply, Moon Jae-young. They had always shared a quiet chemistry, the kind that didn't need public confirmation because it lived in the way they looked at each other, how they moved around one another, the subtle gestures fans noticed but never fully understood. Even after True Beauty ended, their connection never faded. It shifted, evolved, slipped into something softer, something unspoken. Reports from staff members on different sets mentioned that Jae-young would sometimes pause when Eun-woo was brought up in conversation. She never denied anything, never encouraged gossip, but she had a gentle smile, a knowing smile. The kind you give when someone means more to you than you can explain. And so, when Eun-woo enlisted, fans wondered how they would handle the distance. Would they drift apart? Would they become strangers again, separated by schedules and silence? But instead, the opposite happened. Jae-young became quieter on social media. Her posts became softer, more introspective, as though she was sending messages to someone who couldn't reply publicly. A certain bracelet she wore often disappeared the same week Eun-woo left for service. Fans jokingly asked if she gave it to him. No one laughed harder than they did, but the idea stayed in people's minds. So, when the rumor of her visiting him surfaced, it wasn't impossible. It wasn't even surprising. It felt like the natural continuation of a story the public had only seen glimpses of. What happened during that rumored visit? No one knows, not fully. But those who claim to have seen her say it wasn't a long meeting. She entered quietly, and she left just as discreetly. No cameras, no entourage, no fanfare. Just two people who cared about each other, sharing a conversation away from the world. Some fans imagined Eun-woo's surprise at seeing her walk into the visitors' area. He had always been composed, disciplined, steady, but seeing someone who mattered so much, someone who carried a piece of his life before enlistment, must have softened him in ways he didn't expect. Maybe they talked about simple things, work, health, daily routines. Maybe she told him stories from the outside world to keep him connected. Maybe he thanked her for coming, even though he wasn't sure she would. Others imagined Cha Eun sitting across from him, noticing the tiredness in his eyes, the calm maturity that military service often brings. Maybe she encouraged him, reminded him of who he was beyond the uniform. Maybe she laughed at a joke he made, grateful that even in such a serious environment, he still found ways to make her smile. And when it was time to leave, maybe she hesitated. Maybe he did too. Maybe the silence between them said everything neither could say out loud. When the rumor reached the media, nothing was confirmed. Not by his agency, not by hers. Silence. A deliberate, intentional silence. And for fans, that silence was louder than any statement. People began to realize something. They didn't need confirmation. The story was already alive in the way both of them carried themselves afterward. Cha Eun appeared at an event days later, glowing in a way fans hadn't seen in months. Not overly happy, just calm. Peaceful. Like a weight had lifted. Eun-woo, in a rare update through military channels, looked more grounded, more centered than ever. His smile seemed genuine, his energy soft but strong, like someone who had been reminded of home, of comfort, of connection. Whether the visit happened exactly the way fans imagined, no one can say. But the rumor sparked something bigger, a feeling that even in the chaos of fame, some bonds remain untouched, protected, nurtured quietly behind the scenes. And maybe that's what makes the story so compelling. Not the confirmation, not the proof, but the possibility. The quiet beauty of two people holding onto something real, something gentle, something they don't need to prove to anyone. In the end, the rumor about a secret meeting between Moon Jae-young and Cha Eun-woo became more than a simple story. It became a symbol of private loyalty, quiet care, and the kind of relationship that doesn't need to be displayed to be felt. And as fans continue to analyze clues and connect the dots, one thing remains clear. Whatever they share, it's something meaningful, something worth protecting, even behind the gates of a military base. Moon Jae-young didn't speak to the reporters who were gathered quietly outside her hotel. She kept her head down, moved with that careful grace she always had, and slipped into the car waiting for her. But the cameras still caught the smallest thing, the faint smile she tried to hide. It wasn't a big smile, just a quiet curve of the lips, the kind you give when something, or someone, stays on your mind. Inside the car, her manager didn't speak at first. He simply glanced at her through the mirror and then asked, "Are you okay?" Moon Jae-young nodded, but she didn't deny anything either. She simply looked out the window, watching the streetlights blur past, her thoughts drifting back to the quiet place she had visited just a few hours earlier. It wasn't a public park. It wasn't a studio. It was a restricted area, one only authorized people could enter. And yet she had somehow gained entry. No one knew how she got the clearance. No one knew who approved her brief visit. But the guards had recognized her immediately. They whispered, they stared, but they didn't stop her. It was almost as if they knew exactly who she was there for. Inside that silent building, she had walked down the hallway slowly, her heart beating louder with each step. It had been months since she saw him in person. Months since she heard his voice without the distance of a screen or a phone call. But the moment she reached that door, the one with his name written in clean, bold letters, she felt everything stop. She didn't knock at first. She just stood there, listening. She thought she heard quiet music. She thought she heard footsteps inside. She thought she felt something pull her closer. Then, slowly, she raised her hand and tapped lightly. When Cha Eun-woo opened the door, time behaved strangely. It didn't freeze. It didn't rush. It simply softened. He stared at her with shock at first, real surprise in his eyes, the kind he couldn't hide even if he wanted to. His hair was slightly messy, his shirt loose, his expression unguarded in a way only someone comfortable would show. "Jae-young," he whispered. She didn't trust her voice at that moment, so she only nodded. For a second, neither of them knew what to do. He stepped aside first, gesturing for her to come in, and she walked past him, her hands trembling just a little. The room was simple. A bed neatly arranged, training notes stacked on a desk, a guitar leaning against the wall. It felt like him, quiet, organized, warm in a way only he could make it. They sat across from each other at first, not too close, but not far. Then he leaned forward, his eyes searching hers. "You came all the way here?" he asked softly. Moon Jae-young looked down at her fingers and slowly nodded again. "I just wanted to see how you were doing." Cha Eun-woo didn't answer immediately. Instead, he let out a breath he'd been holding for months. A small smile touched his lips, the kind that made his eyes soften. Not the smile he used for fans, not the smile he used on stage. This one was different. "I missed you," he said quietly. The words hung in the air, unplanned, unfiltered, but real. She looked up at him, her eyes widening just slightly. She didn't reply, but she didn't need to. Her silence said more than words ever could. They talked after that. Not about the public, not about rumors, not about what people expected from them. They talked about simple things, her new role, his daily routines, the food he missed, the song he'd been practicing. They laughed softly, the kind of laughter that comes from comfort rather than humor. But the moment everyone would later talk about, the moment that changed everything, happened when she stood up to leave. He walked her to the door, but before she stepped outside, he reached out impulsively, gently taking her wrist. She turned to look at him, surprised, and he let go instantly, embarrassed by his own instinct. "Sorry," he murmured, I wanted to make sure you're okay." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she stepped closer, only slightly, but enough for him to notice. Enough to let him know that she didn't mind his concern. Enough to tell him silently that she was grateful he still cared. For a few seconds, they stood there, close enough to hear each other breathe, close enough to feel what neither dared to say. Then she whispered, "Take care of yourself, Eun-woo." He nodded. "You too, Jae-young." She left quietly, but the guards noticed something, the way she pressed her hand over her chest as she walked away, as if trying to calm the echo of his presence that still lingered there. By the next morning, someone leaked the sighting of her entering the building. Fans analyzed angles, enhanced shadows, and compared clothing to confirm everything. And even though her team denied the rumors, even though Cha Eun-woo's company refused to comment, everyone could sense the truth. Her visit wasn't casual. It wasn't random. It wasn't a coincidence. It was something much deeper, something only the two of them truly understood.